Hello, as you hopefully know, my name is Peyton Birchler, and today I am giving my presentation on my creative writing thesis project, which is titled Tomorrow We Get Healthy. This is intended to be a hypertext novella, so I'm really hoping for something that is non-linear. It is supposed to kind of give you a sense of how trauma fragments everything. It makes it hard to remember things, makes you forget, makes you develop weird anxieties, and it takes place over different landscapes, different generations. The two main characters don't have names. As my advisor described it, it's kind of like a love vortex between them, to kind of give you an idea. So today I selected 3 passages that I think represent my project overall, and I hope you enjoy them. I also apologize if you can't hear me well, if you keep hearing my neighbor landscaping in the background. It's almost sunny in Portland, so they're all out just doing things, and I waited long enough to get them to stop, so kind of just left with this. So I'm going to begin. 1. Follow the body. The sky was white and the rest of the world was gray, though the horizon wasn't very expansive, and, in fact, it did not matter if it was gray or not. There was likely no discernible horizon at all, not that either of us cared. The rain was neither here nor there. We skipped arm in arm down the main street in downtown, peering into vacant storefronts as if they had everything we needed. We laughed at nothing. We weren't talking, just giggling like babies right before tantrums. We had plans to go somewhere, to turn at some cross street in the near distance and hit our next destination, but I couldn't find the sun in the sky, and I had no idea what time it was. The streets were empty, but parked in one of the slanted parking spots was a big white Jeep. Pinned under it, between one of its monstrous wheels and the gray, scarred curb, was a torso and a head. They were still attached to each other. The eyes were closed, lips parted slightly. The body looked manly, but I couldn't be sure. The hair was cropped short, but it was shaggy and dirty, clumped together with grease and something sticky. There was no blood, which did puzzle me. Upon closer inspection, I saw red tendrils where there had been joints, bones, and connective tissues, whatever those were. We stopped and stooped down to examine the body further. I exclaimed something about someone having left this poor guy here alone, but I could have also just thought it. My counterpart looked at me and nodded, with an exaggerated frown that made me giggle. We stepped back and put our hands in front of the Jeep, pushing it back as hard as we could. It rolled backwards into the streets and further away until it was out of sight. He took one shoulder and I took the other, and together we continued our walk, swinging the body between us. "We'll take you home," one of us said, or maybe it was just a determined feeling unspoken between us. There was no confirmation of a plan. Suddenly we were just doing it. Or maybe there was, and I just don't remember. My memory has always been poor. When we got to my apartment, we suddenly had a great deal of trouble trying to carry the body upstairs. At this point, I suppose we were too weak from carrying it through downtown and over the river. Torsos and heads must be heavy. We tried dragging it up the stairs, but it made a dull thud every time it hit a step, which made me feel sick. I hadn't felt sick before. The idea of getting rid of it was suggested. At least we could put it to rest, rather than leaving it pinned under that Jeep. We laid it on the front lawn, then picked little white flowers to weave into the hair. Some of them crumbled in my fingers, but I thought they looked all the more delicate and serene. One of us said a few words. The other nodded somberly. Some sort of peace was felt. It was decided that digging a hole would be too difficult and likely anger my neighbors, so we elected to wrap it in paper grocery bags, write a note to send the spirit off to its next life, and place it gently in my garbage bin. That night we snuggled on my couch, eating pints of sorbet under several layers of blankets. All the lights were off and the sky was dark. My room was illuminated blue by the TV. For some reason, we were watching the news, which neither of us had done in years. There was a flash and a brief sound of a siren. Just a blip. I glanced out the window, but my street was still dark. It was actually coming from the TV. I read news alert strobed in the corner. The newscaster, a blonde woman with a blank face, alerted us that someone was missing, someone who was likely a body at this point. An image was displayed. A man with cropped, shaggy hair, though I could not determine if his face resembled that of the body's because the body was likely swollen. I started to panic. Sweat dribbled down my body. An inquiry floated through the air. Was the garbage bin the right place to dispose of a body? Forgive me, not dispose. We laid it to rest. We laid him to rest. We considered his feelings. The fact that he had life and loved ones was probably missed, didn't we? Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. The police will be here, and they will dig through the trash and find it, and we will be in so much fucking trouble. Oh my god. Oh my fucking god. Sweat pooled under my breasts as I began to rock back and forth in place. I considered running outside, digging it out of the trash, and hiding it somewhere else. Perhaps across the street in the river deep in the island park. That's the place where bodies are found. No. That's just tampering with it more. We'd be doubly fucked. My life was over. This was certain. 2. Ink. We were lying in bed, and I was stroking his tattooed arm, imagining that I was coloring in the flowers with violet and yellow. I tried to count the leaves, but kept losing track. Something told me that knowing the exact number of leaves tattooed on my lover's body was something I should be doing if I really loved him, but perhaps this was a remnant from when I was a teenager and didn't know how love worked. That sounds like me. His eyes were open, gazing at the skylight, which had been rained upon heavily and glowed with the strange light of thick clouds in the early evening. His breaths were small and gentle. I had to turn down the volume on everything else to hear them. His stare flicked over to my own tattooed arm, the one I was lying on. This made me self-conscious, so I looked at it too, gasping in horror when I realized my tattoos had opened up and were now leaking ink onto the baby blue sheets. It was as if someone had taken an X-Acto knife and traced over every line, releasing the art from my skin. I recoiled and began to cry. It just kept pouring out. It's okay, he murmured, taking my wrist with a certain grip. His thumb stroked my chin, painfully rubbing over hard goosebumps. But why is it happening? My voice cracked and I breathed shallowly, the feeling of something leaving my skin, sinking deeper into my stomach like a heavy weight. He shushed me and pressed his lips to my forehead. It just happens after a while. It just happens. He was unbothered after my skin had emptied itself out, his followed suit, beginning with the lowermost sunflower on his outer wrist. His ink mixed with mine on the bed, and it was as if we were sinking into an oil spill. He held me close, and I tried to ignore the horror of losing my etchings through wounds that had suddenly appeared without pain. I did not know if I could ever trust my body again after learning it could just open up and release as it pleases. 3. My audience. The desert was flooded by the moon's glowing whiteness. The hum of the flat landscape meeting the towering rocks was louder at night, overpowering the ringing of my ears, while the chitter of bugs sprinkled here and there. They were only vocal because it was summer. I tried not to think about tarantulas crawling over my boots as I smoked silently in the blue light. I thought of that quote I liked from my favorite movie. In crowded clubs and hotel bars, the shipwreck of the streets rehearsed his future glory, his cigarette tracing a ladder to the stars. I wasn't rehearsing anything here. My glittery nighttime self was reserved for my life in the forest, where there was little to do but drink at night in a crowded, glowing bar. I was stripped down here. It was too hot to be made up, and dressed in anything but the minimum, even at night. I hated the heat in the city, but not in the high desert. I was comforted by it here. It was like a weighted blanket, a big hug from the earth. I still felt like a character, though, on a screen or a page somewhere. This feeling is pervasive when my derealization is at its worst. I thought about the audience watching him fuck me in a white room in an old house up north, pulling my hair until I yelp and whimper. Perhaps they also watched me black out on drugs and alcohol, exchanging words later forgotten with everyone in my sight until I escaped to the bathroom to vomit. I knew for sure they watched me rip out my hair as he screamed at me, making vague threats where I had nothing to do but offer the same apology over and over. I felt ashamed. I owed my dead great-grandma, who I was close to, and my dead Grandma Betty, who I was not as close to because she lived in the Midwest, and called me once during my birthday, were not part of this audience. I didn't want them to see the person I still wanted to marry scream at me like that. I didn't want them to watch me starve myself. On another level, seeped in a similar dose of shame, I also didn't want them watching me spend the money they had left me on 8 balls. These things I didn't have to rehearse. The audience, when I tried to imagine what they look like, are all men with blank faces. Never women, though I'm not sure why. I don't picture them with eyes, though they all sit before the same large screen that I am projected onto, somewhere dark in space. Though they lack faces, they expressively react to what I do. I'm not sure how. I'm not even sure if they make sounds. They've been watching me since high school. I was not aware of them until that one summer where I experienced my first true manic episode. I blamed the heat and the way the sun beat on my Toyota in the afternoons. I slept for 30 minutes to 2 hours a night. I filled 2 journals with collages, some with my own blood. I listened to the same album, Placebo's self-titled 1996 record, over and over again. I watched my favorite movie, The One with the Ladders and the Smoke, over 40 times in the span of a month and a half. I took 3-hour night classes at the local community college, never did the readings, and got all A's. I wrote feverishly after stealing from my parents' liquor cabinet late into the night just to realize the next morning that it was all nonsense. I spent thousands of dollars that weren't really mine on useless shit I left behind when I moved away from home a year later. When it ended, and what I thought was normalcy returned with my sleep schedule, I began to feel watched, but also like I wasn't in my own head. The walls melted into sparkles. My dashboard did this one morning as I drove 3 cities over for school, and I had to pull over into the chill of the early morning, waiting to look at the gray leather and only see its uninterrupted texture. It was like acid visuals before I had ever done psychedelics. Sometimes there was a film over my eyes that wouldn't go away no matter how hard I rubbed. My body felt both impossibly small when I touched it and bloated when I looked in the mirror. Everything tingled, especially my fingertips and my breasts. Each step I took felt hollow and unfamiliar, like my feet weren't mine. My reflection wasn't me. The eyes were too light, black hair too dull, skin waxy and sallow. I had no idea who the fuck I was looking at when I brushed my teeth, which were just little rocks in my mouth that moved mechanically. I didn't feel like a real person. I was alone, but I wasn't lonely, even if I felt like the only person in whatever realm I was stuck in. Hunger and fatigue were only felt vaguely, as if they were trying to reach me through a wall. I operated on autopilot most of the time, and everyone around me grew unfamiliar. I no longer saw life in anyone's eyes. I considered only 2 realities. One where I was the only thing that truly existed, and I interacted with things that had just been thrown into my sight by a force beyond my comprehension, and one where I was a character on a screen played by someone I didn't know. I read about solipsism and decided that this was the thing that could most closely articulate what I felt, but it still wasn't it. I never got better. It just got less noticeable, except for those times where it felt like my world was ending. I don't know why it was returning then, on that strange summer desert night. Maybe it was just the overwhelming silence that allowed the ringing in my ears to grow until the feeling was triggered. The way it sneaks up on me like this has taught me that I can feel alone without ever feeling devastatingly lonely. Always have the audience. So that concludes my reading. Thank you for listening.